All right, Toronto's Mayor Olivia Chow is giving an update now on the massive flooding that hit the city yesterday. Let's listen.
67,000 people with a few thousand more to go. And yes, yesterday was a very, very challenging day for the people that live in our city, that work in our city, but Toronto is resilient. The good news is that DVP, Gardner has reopened, all transit stations are open, power is mostly restored across the city, and with some areas in Etobicoke and some buildings, some homes that with flooded basement are still recovering. Some community centers and pools are coming back online, but we're making great progress in a very short time. Now, there are a lot of people that have flooded basements. We're asking them, if they haven't done so, to call 311, and we could assist you and give you some tips. Many of our rivers and ravines might still be full. For your own safety, don't get too close to the shoreline. And weather events like this are going to occur more frequently because of climate change. And we must take action to build the resiliency of our city and work to mitigate the impact of these storms. So, Paul, did you want to say a few words about all that work that's happening in the city?
Well, thanks, Mayor, and I want to echo my thanks to the Toronto Public Service. Both yesterday, of course, we had activated in advance of this storm, recognizing that there was the potential for impact. Clearly, the amount of rainfall in certain parts of the city far exceeded what we were anticipating and the best information we had, which led to us having to pivot and obviously taking care of a number of extra critical things that happened during the day as best as we could. As the mayor said, generally speaking, people were able to get into the city this morning. So some of the happiest early morning texts and emails I've ever received were our crews opening up the DVP and the Gardner for the morning rush hour from a vehicle perspective, and also the word that Union Station would be fully open. There are a few impacts to the GO network. We've been talking to our folks at Metrolinx, but the trains are running. Some of them have to divert around some standing water. A couple of roads still have some standing water and are still closed. We're working to assess those and get them back online. As the mayor mentioned, recreation was hit pretty hard. We were able to keep camps open through the day yesterday. Today, some were canceled. Some of our outdoor pools were closed, but they're slowly coming back online. And the good news is power has been restored to all of our outdoor pools, which was one of the reasons that we couldn't open them. With some sunny weather on the next couple of days horizon from the weather forecast, it's good news there. I do know that people have been questioning. I've received some emails from the public, and certainly there have been some questions about decisions that were made through the day yesterday, particularly around some of the roadways. And as always, we review every incident afterwards, and we will be paying particular attention to how we can utilize data and evidence in a stronger way to look at what response we should take. But it's important to note, even in the days or weeks preceding this event yesterday, we have had heavy rainfalls. We've not had the kind of impact on our roadways. There was a very unique circumstance that rolled across the more lakeside of the city, and in particular the West End. And when I received the data points from Toronto Water yesterday, looking at the volumes that happened, it was very interesting. In the West End and along the lake, many of those volumes were over 100-year storm level in terms of rainfall. And then in other parts of the city, it was just a summer thunderstorm, lots of rain coming down, but not the same impact. So that's what we dealt with yesterday. As always, we'll review it to see how we can do better in the future. And just thanks to Torontonians for their patience yesterday. And again, thanks to all of our workers for the work that they put in yesterday and have put in overnight and continue to put in today to make sure that our city gets back to full business.
Yesterday, you both discussed, I'll speak to the mayor first, and perhaps both of you can answer the question. You both spoke about the city's infrastructure and dealing with this sort of thing. You just spoke about building the resiliency and to try and make sure that the city doesn't necessarily have to do this sort of thing again. That's not an easy task. Could you talk about the bigger picture and the issues that the city has in dealing with this sort of thing and what needs to happen?
Well, repairing old infrastructure helps. Some of our buildings are really old, and the pipes, for example, on the second floor at City Hall are leaking every time it rains, so we need to replace it or repair it. In TTC, we saw a few stations just basically flooding, and there's a lot of prevention work that can be done. Part of the good news is this, that because of the upload of the Garner and the DVP, by the province of Ontario, that we're very grateful, that we're able to free up the $2 billion that we can now distribute among all the older infrastructure, and we'll repair and renew our infrastructure. So that piece is good. The second piece is all the work that we need to do to prevent the flooding. So the federal government, being a good partner, have done quite a bit of work around that, and you're seeing it by the waterfront on the east side. There's conversation that is happening on the Pape, the Broadview, and the Eastern Lake, the East Harbor. We can't build new housing there. We want to build new housing. Everyone wants new housing, but until we do the flood protection, we can't build it, and that's another $200 million. We've put aside money in the province, half of it. The federal government we hope that they would join in with that flood protection work. And in terms of Council Enunciado's area, the west part of, am I getting into too much details? So, you asked the details, so it's important because it's mostly the west part of the city that are flooding. And that's the western, York Southwestern area, and they are having a really hard time. And some of the homeowners have told me previously that they have difficulty buying insurance for their basement because it floods. And there's a lot of work that can be done, and there's been conversation with the federal government, and I'm convinced that they will also come and support us on that, because these residents in that area desperately need it. So those are some of the other areas that we need to do in partnering with other levels of government. If you want even more details, okay, we're shaking head. Maybe we don't want to do that. Okay.
Perhaps you can just give us a sense of what exists. There are projects that are underway. We know about the bypass tunneling that's taking place. Could you just give us an update on that sort of thing and how that might help in these situations?
So one of the specific things we've got is a 4-year plan on basement flooding work. It's literally pages of projects happening across through the city, through Toronto Water. Those are the types of projects that will help. After a day like yesterday, it's hard to hear the news, but we are better off than we've been in the past. We will continue to get better. The challenge is we're improving our systems and the old infrastructure at the same time these events continue to happen. I mean, I don't even know why we talk about 100-year storms anymore, because that definition seems to have flown right out the window. We've had 3 of them in the last 11 years. So I think those are the types of issues. The mayor talked about major flood protection pieces, which we're doing to ensure that we don't build housing in areas that are going to only have problems later on, which is a bit of a useless exercise. But the challenge is much of the city is just not designed to handle this amount of water that's coming down, and that's what we saw yesterday. So the stuff we're doing moving forward, new developments, new projects, are all much better designed, and our regulations around what can be built will allow for a much better absorption of these types of events. The challenge is most of the buildings and most of our roadways and right-of-ways are not built to that standard, and that would take a tremendous amount of resource and a long time to change. So trying to do the things, I think, from a resident perspective, the work that's happening through Toronto Water to look at how we help with the basement flooding piece is work that over the next 4 years we'll definitely see some results, so we can all live through some of these things a little bit easier.
Follow-up question to that. So there are older parts of the city. We have a combined system where sewer water can't be separated from storm water. What can you point to a project right now that may help fix that down the road? Do we have anything to help mitigate that and separate systems?
Well, the way we're developing our infrastructure program is what does that. Older municipalities have this challenge, and so completely changing systems is oftentimes just not feasible from either a space underground perspective, and the other piece is, of course, the resource that it would take. But the way we are building our infrastructure today, whenever we look at the work that's happening on streets, a lot of that is what we call upsizing work, right? To take on the more people that are living in this city. They are done with a design that will help mitigate and manage this better in the future. But again, completely redesigning our subsurface infrastructure system from a water and sewer perspective, just not possible in any time frame or with the resources we have. So we keep getting better. Our systems keep getting better with it, and we've got plenty of projects, obviously, that are trying to make sure we don't have breakage issues, and we also have better ways of moving the water when it comes our way.
Let me answer that piece, may I? There are things that homeowners can do. For example, you can disconnect your downspout and have it flow into rain barrels. And it can also come in gently into the garden, if you have one. And greening your front yard and the backyard means that the water can then be absorbed into the soil as much as possible. And the parking pads that are in front of houses, for example, if you have one, interlocking bricks can mitigate that. So all of those things combined can assist some of the flooding that might happen into the basement. We're looking at, can we help homeowners do that? Can we provide incentive? All of that is being considered right now. Sorry, you have a question here.
Yeah, so question for both of you. Toronto recently spent millions renovating Union Station, and yet yesterday there was what many are referring to as a waterfall inside the station, and the floor was covered in sewage. So should the city not have anticipated extreme weather events when planning for this, making such huge investments, and what are the long-term impacts also going to be?
I don't know about Union Station. It was done.
So, in anticipating these things happening, yes, we know they're on the horizon. There isn't a piece of work that could have been done in Union Station to stop the water that was flowing there. Our crews were out to clean it up as quickly as possible to deal with the situation at Union. But when you have an event like yesterday, and we're talking about getting months worth of rain in a few hours, it's really hard to see how you would engineer and design in this type of a city to fully protect the way it works. So could it have been worse? Probably, with old technology in our old system, so better. And the fact that it is up and fully operational today and safe for people to use today, I think is a testament to the fact that we can manage through these situations. Believe me, nobody wants to see water coming into any building, whether it's the roof leakages here at City Hall or whether it was Union Station. But I think we need to separate out yesterday's event a little bit, which was a very unique circumstance of water, and one that we need to be aware of, from the fact that we get a lot of rain and a lot of water coming into the city on a regular basis year over year, and we're able to manage it. So yes, a lot of money spent. Yes, yesterday our crews did their best to keep it going, and today back up and operational fully. So I think that's the good news story in that we did not have to shut down Union Station for a long period of time in order to remediate it.
When you talk about foresight, I mean, that section of the DVP just south of Gerrard, it's a known problem area. It's the low-lying area of the DVP. Can you talk about whose call it is to make the decision to actually shut it down so you don't have dozens of people stranded on that section of highway?
So Toronto Emergency Management coordinates that. I mean, from a technical perspective, we would work with the police, who have the authority to shut down the road. The city doesn't do that. The police would do from a technical perspective. And as I say, we're monitoring, and the updates were, here's what we're expecting. Don't forget, when Beryl came through, the remnants of Hurricane Beryl, we had significant rain coming down. We did not have that impact happen. And our early predictions and estimates working through Environment Canada data and all the rest was that we were going to see significant rain, but rain that we felt we could handle in that circumstance. It's always a balance of what do we do. And and we do have to think about the impact on other parts of life in what we're doing to protect. However, the safety and well-being of Torontonians is always ahead of inconvenience or everything else. And that's why we're reviewing. In fact, I've asked, the meeting happened this week. What could we learn from how we can use information? It will not be helpful for us to say every time there's a thunderstorm coming through, we're going to close the Don Valley Parkway. That's not a helpful answer to the issue. What is, though, is to say, how do we know when these cells are a little different than a normal summer thunderstorm or something like that? What is it we need to be aware of that allows us to do it? I will say the pivot to action limited pretty severely the number of vehicles that were impacted. It could have been a lot worse had we not been having this coordinated and integrated approach. We also have to look at Bayview and what happened on Bayview, because it ended up being closed, and there are things that we can do at Bayview as well. So we're going to look at that. I don't want people to feel that we were unprepared. We were. However, the situation changed pretty significantly. And when that shifted, we needed to pivot to try and ensure the safety of the folks that were caught in that storm. We'll look at it, and whatever we learn from it, we'll be able to share and then implement next time.
Okay, you've been listening there to Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow and City of Toronto Manager Paul Johnson. They're talking about that flooding event that impacted Toronto and many other areas in Ontario yesterday. They said the city is simply not built to handle that amount of rain. They spoke about how the city is looking at how it can build infrastructure in the future that isn't so heavily impacted by heavy rain, but they say that changing the existing infrastructure brings many, many challenges. More than a month's worth of rain. Over 120 millimetres of rain fell in the span of about 3 hours on Tuesday, causing chaos and flooding across Canada's biggest city.